Matthew in New York. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Adya. My question is about death, and I keep bumping up pretty much on a daily basis something to do with death.
As the alarms go off on the background, it's perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly. It's an ambulance running by. Yeah.
A good atmosphere to talk about fear of death.
I couldn't have timed it better.
You couldn't have constructed that one if you worked for it. Anyway, yes.
Yeah. So just as a quick example, I'm a physical therapist, and today outside of my office, a man fell and smacked his head on the pavement, and he's okay and things, but was bleeding. And just that simple experience, it immediately triggers the whole cascade of events inside me about death and dying.
Yeah.
And I keep bumping up against it, and it really does feel like something on a regular basis keeps bringing me back to that place.
Of course it does.
And I can't. It's almost like I don't know how. It has lessened. It used to be like terror, kind of fear, and I would do anything I could to distract myself away from the thought. Yeah. But that has mellowed out, and now I get to this point, and I feel like I'm on the fringe, and I can't let go. I feel like I have one thread holding me back from finally just surrendering to it, and it's almost like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say one thing is things like surrender. I mean, for the most surrender happens through us.
Yeah.
I think on an experiential level at some point, I mean, sure, at some point you might go, okay, I give up, but that's usually the last resort.
Right.
Right? It's when you're basically just worn out and worn down.
Exactly.
And, it's not necessarily an act of great transcendental wisdom. It's like, okay,
Right.
So I think for most of us, surrender kind of looks a lot more like that than something that's very sort of, well, yes, of course, I'll just let go.
Exactly.
That's what the teaching says. It's a little less, it's a little more humbling, I think, usually. But first of all, I think the first thing that might be useful for you is, first of all, in your experience, like literally sit down and take some time at some point and start to distinguish between the thoughts about death and dying.
Yes.
And the experience. And of course, we both know that the thoughts often generate the experience, right?
Right.
And not only generate the experience, but the thoughts sustain the experience.
Right.
So
the place I keep bumping up against is I have two kids.
Yeah.
And it's like I've had death in my life, and tragedies of family members dying, and there's always that sense like there's this unbelievable grief on the in the experience, and then it seems like people just kind of move on. And as a little kid, I lost my grandmother at 9, and it was I didn't understand how people could just move on.
Just move on, right.
Yeah, and now I get to that place, and I think of my kids, and if I die before them, like I can't fathom it, and I don't, of course, want to not experience them.
Right.
And so every time I bump up against that, because you're right, the thoughts about that's what I mean has mellowed. There's like a mellowing of me in my own death. But then when I get to that other,
I think my sense is, and I was going to ask you, but you volunteered the information before I asked you, so that I really appreciate that, which was, my sense was that almost everybody you meet has some unresolvedness around death, right?
Yes.
Even if nothing ever happens to them that sort of really, lights the old death issue for them in their, in their early lives. But I think really, so you had this experience with your grandmother when you were very young.
Yes.
And then you notice people moving on, right? Or acting like they moved on, because that's how adults cope, right? They kind of just act.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're adults. They have to move on, right? They can't just fall apart in their room forever, right? They got to go to work. They got to take care of the kids. They got to, So, but there you were, and for you, it was unresolved.
Yeah.
And to me, it sounds like, and it feels like, it's still unresolved.
Right.
You're still back in that place, but you're experiencing it in current time now.
Yeah.
Right.
And it definitely, going through physical therapy, we had to do gross anatomy, and the actual dissection was nothing but the body bags. And the truth is, it was one of those moments that during the physical therapy that really completely destroyed any type of faith I had in religion, because everybody I went to ask questions about death had bullshit answers.
Yeah.
And it's been, I was 9 at the time and I'm 44. And there's still, like I said, flashes. But I can tell you that I've had some transformative things. And of course, since that's happened, the pace and the persistence of death it's definitely, it's like every week, every day, there's something that triggers that experience. And, most nights, in fact, just I was listening to one here taped 2 nights ago, and I'm literally praying to die before I die. And how do I let go? How do I let go?
Yeah. Well, okay, here's how you let go.
Yes.
And this is not going to be satisfying, probably. Here's how to let go, though. The first thing, and I mean this very, very sincerely, the first big thing, the biggest thing about letting go is to really take in that you don't know how to let go.
Right.
It's one thing to say it and even to live it, like I've tried so much and it just doesn't work for me and I don't know how to let go and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But then you stop and you go, I don't know how to do, I can't let go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not some personal failing. It's like asking me to jump to the moon. I can't do that either. But that doesn't mean,
like I can't.
It's not because there's something intrinsically, you haven't, intrinsically wrong with you.
No.
It's just that letting go is something that life does through us.
Right.
It's not something that really we make happen,
Right. It's like the surrender. You can't make yourself surrender.
No.
It's more,
But part of it, if you can see, and this is a real subtle line, but I think it's really important. When you can see or when you can feel like, I just can't do that, I don't know how to do that, but not to get stuck in those negative conclusions. You just I don't know how to do it, I can't do it. But you're still open, you're not kind of going into that negative thing.
Right.
That's really a potent place.
Okay.
Because you feel you're sort of, there's an insecurity about it.
Yeah.
Right? There's a sort of unresolvedness.
Yeah, absolutely.
All
unknown. Yeah, absolutely.
The unknown, right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I keep bumping up to that point you're talking about. I get it.
I know. I would think, on top of what I've already said, but I would just sort of, again, it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes people make these things more complicated than I intend to, but if you can just sort of be with yourself at some point, just kind of take a moment to be quiet and just ask yourself, or even driving home or whatever, ask yourself, so what is it that never got a chance to really resolve itself?
Right.
When I was really young about death, I saw all the people around me. That was really confusing. They're all acting like they just go on with life.
Yeah.
And here you are, and you're not going on with life. You don't know how to do that. You don't know how to fake it very well because you're a kid. You haven't learned that very well. You learn that later.
Right? Yeah. I still can't, though. It's the same. I had a friend commit suicide, and it was the same. Yeah. Everybody's devastated, and all of a sudden we're joking, and I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
So there's definitely something unresolved about the whole process.
I would just sort of sit with and go, what is that? No, not so much in a big intellectual thing, but, what feeling just never got to complete itself? Okay. Did my grief get to complete itself, or did I kind of started to get it together like the adults around me, or whatever it was? Right. What didn't get to complete? Of course, almost anybody's going to have some fear of what you're talking about, of death. And, and they think, so that's, I'm not suggesting that, if you didn't have what happened to you, you wouldn't have any fear. That's not true. But I think it's complicating it more than it might otherwise be, which is why it's been a theme through your life, right? Obviously, from that time on.
The thought that comes up right now is that I was taught. I grew up in a Christian background, so I was taught about this place called heaven, and that was the excuse that was used is, oh, she's gone to heaven.
Right.
And my grandmother's killed by a drunk driver on her way home from church.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what? How does that work?
Right.
How do you take that woman who is devoted to God and take her?
Right. She was just going to visit God, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
As a kid, that doesn't add up, does it?
Right. And that's the unknown. Where did this go? Where is she? Where's she gone?
Yeah.
And how is that possible that she's gone? It's like this place of I don't get into that, of course, but that's the place. It's that the same thing with the kids. What happens if I'm not here? What's their experience? What's my experience? Do I experience them when I'm gone? Right. Is there any experience it's like this part that there's a place inside me that knows, and yet I can't. I don't know if it's that truth trying to poke through and show me, but there's a place that knows the answer to it, and I'm like literally on the edge of knowing this thing.
You are,
and I know
you are, and there's no way I'm going to steal it from you.
Yeah,
It has to come from inside you.